XYZ bill in another committee. No. Also, abide by our time limits. If we say you have 2 to 3 minutes to speak from the audience, then abide by that. I do give organizations that have membership, that brings membership to the committee, a little bit more time to kind of reflect on the organizational position on the legislature. In terms of the bill process, we'll be calling up the bill presenter, and the bill presenter will be moved from the attendee status to the panelist status. Likewise, the bill presenter will have expert witnesses. Sometimes they don't. And when they have expert witnesses, those individuals will also be recognized, will be moved from the attendee status to panelist status. And when we go to the audience, there'll be opportunities. The chair will ask those in opposition to raise their hand, and they will hit the raise hand option at the bottom of the screen, and we will count those and record them as how many were opposed. Of those in opposition, we'll ask who wishes to speak, and we'll give those people the opportunity to speak in opposition to the bill. And we will do the same for those in support of the legislation. We'll ask raise their hand, those that raise their hand if they wish to speak in support. You don't necessarily have to speak, but if you wish, you have the option. And also the issue of amendments, we have a 24-hour amendment policy. And that means that an amendment to a piece of legislation has to come in 24 hours before we hear the bill. And the amendment is presented by that sponsor to the secretary. The secretary immediately releases that amendment to the analyst. And what I'll be doing this year, because there was some concern from the Republican office, the minority office, of how do we record that 24-hour period. Some kind of, I'm not real picky when it comes to kind of holding strictly to kind of a policy. I think we have to be flexible in this type of new session. So I'm willing to send a copy of the amendment to the Republican office, the time when it hits our secretary. That way they see, and the secretary can document the time that it came in. That way we have full transparency, and we kind of are comfortable knowing that this amendment came in within the 24-hour period. Members, that's pretty much all I had in terms of the organizational portion. Does anybody else wish to comment or reflect, on what we've presented? No? Okay.
Okay. Just a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Would you like the analyst? Would you like the analyst to keep our videos off and our sound muted during all the discussion?
That would be good.
That would be good. I'm sorry?
Yes, that would be good.
Okay.
If you could do that. Okay, members, I think we're ready to rock and roll on our first bill. I'm turning this over to the vice chair. She'll be basically chairing the proceedings of this first piece of legislation because it's my bill. so I can't be the chairman of the committee and the presenter at the same time. I wish I could, but I don't have that power yet where I can kind of separate myself. So Vice Chair Serrato, you're the chair.
Thank you so much.
And proceed accordingly.
Thank you. Well, the first item on today's agenda is House Bill 41. So Representative Garcia, please bring House Bill 41, Partitions of Land Grants, forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the committee, House Bill 41 is a very important piece of legislation. It's been a top 3 priority bill of the Land Grant Interim Committee for going on, I want to say, 6 years. And it basically allows these partition land grants to become part of the larger mix of land grants known as land grants that are political subdivisions of the state, that are units of government. This legislation has passed the legislature twice. In 2017, unanimously, the House, the Senate voted unanimously to pass this legislation, pocket vetoed by Governor Martinez, carried by Tomas Salazar. In 2020, a similar scenario. Passed the House unanimously, passed the Senate with 1 dissenting vote. Sponsored Tomas Salazar, pocket vetoed by Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. This land grants as political subdivisions of the state was first established shortly after the Land Grant Interim Committee was established in 2003. And the first task of that Land Grant Interim Committee was to do an all-exclusive reform legislation on land grants in terms of bringing them up to the present in terms of their governance, their issues of transparency, their elections, and their focus on retaining their comments and winning back their comments. That was the purpose of the interim committee. And so in 2004, the legislature passed this monumental land grant reform bill that included all these elements in modernizing the statutes of our land grants and further empowering them as units of government. So the first time ever, it created land grants as a political subdivision, equal in terms of political status to municipalities, county governments, school boards, improvement districts. I think I mentioned county government and city governments. And that bill brought in approximately 24 land grants automatically in 2004. It brought in 24 land grants automatically into that new political status of political subdivision. These were land grants that were known as the Article 1 land grants in the General Provisions Act of Chapter 49, which is where we have all our land grant statutes. Automatically. What did not happen is that there were other land grants that didn't come in automatically. The Article 2 land grants, Representative Fajardo's land grant, the Tomé land grant, did not come in automatically in 2004. The Atrisco land grant did not come in automatically in 2004. So what did these 2 land grants have to do? They came to the legislature with a separate piece of legislation to roll them in to the same status as these other original 24 land grants. And there was other land grants that didn't automatically come in 2004 as a political subdivision. And who were these? The Chilili land grant, the Tecolote land grant, it was in the Castellanos area, the Manzano land grant. So what did these three land grants do? In time, they came to the legislature. They put specific statute or specific bills to roll them in to the same status as these 24 original land grants, these two other land grants that came in under the Article 2. And now we have these specific statutory land grants that were approved unanimously to be also a political subdivision of the state. These three land grants that I mentioned are in Chapter 49 as a specific statute. Chilili is on there. You can go to Chapter 49 and you'll see Chilili, you'll see Manzano, you'll see Tecolote. But you can see that they have limited authority and power in their statute. And they have no political subdivision in their original statutory structure. So now we have Chapter 41. We have House Bill 41 that again is wanting to do the same thing that these other land grants have done to become a political subdivision. And these are partition land grants. They're known as partition land grants. And we have partition land grants in Taos County, the Arroyo Hondo Arriba land grant. We've met there a couple of times. It's north of Taos. We have a number of these partition land grants in San Miguel County. The Lower Gallinas land grant, which is west of the old Montezuma, castle. We have Los Vigiles land grant, which is north of Las Vegas, between Story Lake and Las Vegas. We have San Agustin, which is south of Las Vegas, on the road to La Liendre, a little bit before you hit the Anton Chico land grant. And we have El Carmel partition grant in Mora County, just south of Mora, on what I call the low road to Las Vegas, and because it's a secondary road, not the main road where El Carmel is located. And what does House Bill 41 do? It does exactly what we've done with these other land grants. It gives them the same authority and same powers. And why? Because right now, these partition land grants are marginalized land grants. They have no capital outlay access. They cannot access capital outlay, like the 24 original land grants, like the 2 Article 2 land grants, like the 3 statutory specific land grants. So they cannot improve their community from a capital outlay perspective because they're not considered a unit of government. They cannot access federal grants. And we've had a couple of these land grants that lost federal grants because the federal entity realized that they were not an official land grant. And you'll hear that from the experts. There's no protection of these land grants as with the other land grants. For one of the biggest legal expenses of our land grants has been these adverse possession lawsuits on our land grant by individuals that go in there, stake a claim, survey the forest part of the land, record it in the county clerk's office, pay taxes on it. Yet it's not theirs. It's the land grants. So then they file adverse possession lawsuits to claim title, and then a lot of cases, the land grant has to go to court, prove that this is theirs. Many times, there is not that money, so they settle. Well, the majority of land grants cannot be adversely possessed. But yet, these partition land grants that I mentioned can be still adversely possessed in the courts of law. Also, there is no right of refusal for purchase of state-owned property. The majority of land grants, whenever the state has a building, property, within the original boundaries of a land grant, they have to give the land grant right of first refusal to purchase it. And if the land grant doesn't want to purchase it, then they put it on the auction block and open it up. These partition land grants don't have that opportunity to do that. Also, we have statutes that basically state that if a survey is ever done on a land grant or on the periphery outside of the original boundaries, that surveyor has to give notice to the Board of Trustees that there is this survey going on in the land grant or on the periphery. Why is that so important? Why did we pass that law? Because we have these basically individuals that stake claim to the common, go get a survey, pay taxes on it, and then 10 years later end up in a lawsuit with the land grant for adverse possession. That's why the land grants need heads up in terms of what surveys are being done. These partition land grants do not have that option. And I want to mention to the committee, Madam Chair, that we have been very respectful and very inclusive of the opposition on this bill. In fact, in the 2019 session, when Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham vetoed this bill, she never heard firsthand from the partition land grants. She only heard from the opposition. And part of her reasoning for vetoing was that she wanted to see a win-win situation with this. She wanted to see all parties kind of come to head. And you know, we've given the opposition every opportunity to understand this legislation thoroughly. And we went over and beyond in December 20th of 2019, 7 months after the session ended. And myself and Representative Tomas Salazar called a meeting at the Student Union Building in New Mexico Highlands in Las Vegas. And we brought in the governor's staff, Victor Reyes, to hear firsthand from the partition land grants why this bill is so important to them. At this meeting were the partition land grants. At this meeting was the opposition, because we wanted the opposition to also hear firsthand from the partition land grants why this bill is so important to them. They had never really faced off with the opposition, or the opposition had never really faced off face to face with these partition land grant leaders to hear firsthand why this is so important to them. And it was a cordial meeting, you know, and everybody had their say. And there was a lot of issues that came from that meeting in terms of some existing land grants. That maybe their course of action might want to be improved if a different direction was taken. Like, for example, the Las Vegas land grant. had the opportunity to understand and hear how possibly it would behoove them to move from their current status of being controlled by the district court to one of being a political subdivision, controlled and ruled by a board of trustees elected by the heirs. And so there was a lot of really good eye-opening efforts that came from that meeting on December 20th, 2019 in Las Vegas. And with that, Madam Chair, I want to recognize one of my two witnesses, expert witnesses. So I would like to yield to Ron Ortega with the Lower Gallinas land grant to also reflect on the importance of this legislation.
Thank you, Representative Garcia. Has Gabby, are you the one that's going to be letting people in that are witnesses? Or is maybe Gabby's on? Mary, is that you that will be letting folks in, or to be panelists, to be witnesses for this?
Yes, I will. But which one? What's his number?
Yeah, I don't see the name on here. I don't see Mr. Ortega on the attendee list right now. Representative Garcia, are they the caller in, perhaps?
It might be the caller in.
Caller, Mary, if you can unmute the caller, we can check if that is the right person.
Okay, I unmuted him.
I believe the phone call, the last four digits are 0735. You can unmute yourself. You have that power now. If you are Mr. Ron Ortega, we'd love to hear from you as one of the expert witnesses on this.
Or Mr. Joseph Padilla, Madam Chair. Those are my two witnesses.
I also don't see Mr. Padilla in the list. Do you see him, Mary?
No, I don't see him on the list. So I'm thinking maybe it's that phone number.
Person that's called in, you're unmuted. You can speak now. Are you one of the two witnesses?
Madam Chair, I think they hung up.
Representative Garcia, how would you like to proceed? Would you like to move to questions, or I'm sorry, comments from the audience? Or do you want to reach out to them again?
Madam Chair, these are individuals that are calling from the frontier areas of San Miguel County and Mora County. So we'll have to kind of just play it by ear in terms of them being able to kind of connect. But yes, Madam Chair, you proceed in terms of going to the audience.
So, and we do understand. Thank you so much for that, Representative Garcia. And when we do see them in the list, we'll have them go ahead and comment then. But for now, we'll go ahead and move into public comment. As the chairman had mentioned earlier, we'll have everyone who is in opposition to HB 41, please raise your hand. You can see that at the bottom as one of the options. And that way we can take a tally of all those who are attendees who are in opposition to this bill. So I'll give a moment for everyone to look at the bottom of the screen. You'll see you can click raise hands. We can take that tally. Currently, I do not see any raised hands in opposition. That way we can get a tally of all those that are in favor of this bill. I'll give it a moment for folks to raise their hands. Okay, Mary, if you can record that we have 4 individuals that aren't our attendees who are in support of this bill. Now, if you'd like to speak, please keep your hands raised. But if you don't want to speak, go ahead and click that button again, that hand button, and it'll take down your hand. So if you would like to speak, please keep your hands raised. And if you are in support of the bill, please keep your hands raised. Great. So right now, I have 4 members of the public who are in support of HB 41 who would like to speak. I'm going to go in the order that they are on my screen, and then Mary, you can go ahead and unmute them as we go through. Does that sound good? Great. So let's start with Ms. Maestas. Ms. Maestas, now you're able to unmute yourself. Go ahead and speak, please. And please, as the chairman mentioned earlier, we're keeping this to about 2 to 3 minutes per individual speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I am Tanya Maestas. I am the Chief Deputy at the Attorney General's Office, who oversees the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo Land Grant Division. We have worked closely with the representative in this matter, and we are in full support of this bill and ready to take on any additional duties as necessary through the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo Land Grant Division.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Maestas. We appreciate you joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and turn to Mr. Archuleta.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Arturo Archuleta with the New Mexico Land Grant Council. The council is in support of this legislation. They've worked with some of these communities to try to figure out how they can provide assistance. And I also have Mr. Chairman with me, who just called Mr. Joseph Padilla, who was trying to get on, but he said he was unable to unmute himself. He tried the *6, and I have him on the phone if you would like, and I can put him through my speaker, and you might be able to hear his testimony that way, if you would like, Mr. Chairman.
That should, if that's okay with you, Representative Garcia, Mr. Archuleta is our last person on here who's raised their hand. Our other 2 attendees that requested to speak have taken down their hands. So if it's okay with you, Representative Garcia, I think we can go ahead and have Mr. Padilla speak through Mr. Archuleta's phone.
Yes, Madam Chair, proceed.
Okay, Joseph, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Go ahead and talk, Joseph, and let's see if the committee can hear you.
Joseph Padilla, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, they can hear you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. Good morning, esteemed Representative Garcia. My name is Joseph Padilla. I have lived in Los Vejiles for 75 years. I have been a member of the Los Vejiles Partition Grant for 53 years. I have also served on the Los Vejiles board. I have served on the Acequia Commission for the Los Vejiles Acequia. The community of Los Vejiles was settled prior to 1835. The settlers were farmers, ranchers, woodcutters, and skilled laborers. The surrounding area included small farms and common lands. The farms were adjacent to the Gainas River. The common lands were adjacent to the village in the area of the mountains and the forest. Partition Grant is adjacent to the village of Los Vejiles. The Los Vejiles Acequia was formally recognized in 1841 by the Mexican governor in Santa Fe. Priority date to Los Vejiles Acequia is 1841, but it was already constructed and farming was present since 1835 or earlier. The forested area around Los Vejiles was used as common lands for the community of Los Vejiles. It was organized with a governing structure. Some of the uses of the common lands included grazing, timber, wood, hunting, dry farming, and some irrigation in the Cañón del Agua area. Some individuals actually built homes and settled within the Partition Grant. Now move forward to 1951. The Las Vegas Land Grant wanted to sell the common lands adjacent to Los Vejiles. Jose Martinez and Jose Maria actually purchased 100 acres within the Partition Grant. A group from Los Vejiles was able to get a deed for 3,000 acres from the Las Vegas Land Grant around 1951. Similar deeds were granted to Lower Gainas, San Jeronimo, and others. Since before 1835, settlers from Los Vejiles have used common lands of the Partition Grant. common lands were organized with a governing structure. Settlers relied on the acequia for farming and the common lands for grazing, wood, timber, game, and dry farming. The land and water were inseparable. The Partition Grant of 1951 has been governed by an elected board of trustees. The Partition Grant has been self-governing and defended itself in court. We have been a standalone entity. Regular meetings are held in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. There's a set of bylaws, and regular elections are held. The original instigation for the partition to become a unit of government was because of the challenges Los Vigiles experienced in receiving watershed restoration and fire prevention from the state. The State Forestry Division had approved funds to reduce the risk of fire to the watershed of Las Vegas, but the uncertain status of Los Vigiles delayed moving the funds into action. Additionally, Los Vigiles successfully defended itself in court against not a state landowner who blocked access on the road to the thinning area. Los Vigiles prevailed in district and appellate courts at great sacrifice to its members. We received no support or help from the Las Vegas land grant. To summarize a few bullets, we, Los Vigiles, support the partition grant to become a unit of government. It will enable us to apply for grants such as forest thinning. Thinning improves habitat for wildlife, reduces forest fires, and makes firewood available to the public. Forest thinning is very badly needed. In some areas, we have 400 trees per acre, where 40 to 50 should be the norm. Los Vigiles is a tributary to the Gainas River, which is a drinking water to the city of Las Vegas, and acequia water for farming. Becoming a unit of government means compliance to the Open Meetings Act. There is fiscal oversight by the state, audit requirements by the state. It promotes transparency from public officials, regular meetings, bylaws, agendas. There is accountability for public officials. All business must be done at regular meetings. House Bill 41 is very important to us, and as our esteemed Representative Garcia said earlier, it has passed committees, houses, but pocket vetoed by 2 governors. The Los Vigiles subgrant has been having an organized entity with a self-governing structure since 1835, and we would like to become a unit of government. It allows us to defend ourselves in court. Thank you very much for your time. And I will allow or ask for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. I'm not seeing any of the attendees change at all on the list. And so I think at this time, we can go ahead and turn to the members of our committee. So members, if you do have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand as well. And I can call on you as I see them.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I wanted to let you know that I was just able to text somebody who had been trying to get onto the hearing. The information, I guess they couldn't access it through their email, so they may hop on, and I will try to look for them and alert the committee as soon as they're on.
Please do. Thank you, Gabby. We appreciate that. So looking at the panel, I'm looking at it really fast. I see that we have a, oh, sorry, that was you, Gabby. Are there any questions from the committee? Representative Black.
I'm sorry, I was got a call. I have, I guess, a couple of questions, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, sorry. I guess my question is, I know you briefly touched on why the governor had pocket vetoed it. do we think that that's going to happen again this time, Madam Chair, Representative?
Madam Chair and Representative Black, I don't foresee that happening. We've kind of, the governor was appreciative of the fact that we did set up that meeting on December 20th, kind of work within her framework, win-win situation. And I think she is understanding that we have reached out and pursued that. So I don't foresee another veto on this legislation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman. I guess I'm trying to get my head around. Okay, so the purpose of this is just basically to include these other land grants to consider them equal. Is that correct, Madam Chair? Mr. Chairman?
That's correct, Madam Chair, Representative Black.
So, Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, I guess I understand the premise of the wanting to be created equal. And I guess, I go back to the property tax thing, that's always my question. Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, so basically if these would be included, then they would be, would they then not pay property taxes? Do you know?
Madam Chair, Representative Black, that's a good question. And we've dealt with that in past years. Keep in mind that, for example, Los Vejiles and Lower Gainas, they have approximately 3,000 acres. They've been paying property taxes on those 3,000 acres ever since they were granted a partition land grant status. That is not going to change. When we give them this new status, they will continue to pay property taxes on the commons that they own, 3,000 acres. And the reason for that is because land grants to this day are not exempted from paying property tax. That was an issue, and this is not typical of a political subdivision. Municipalities do not pay property tax. County governments do not pay property tax. Conservancy districts do not pay property tax. School boards do not pay property tax. But the land grants did not want to go there until they were solidified in their governance authority as land grants. And I don't think we're at that point to even begin to look at that presently. So no, these land grants that are going to be coming in to the mix are still going to pay those property tax.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I'm just really having a hard time getting Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, I hear from my colleagues that a lot of the land grant properties are delinquent on their property taxes. And there seems to be an issue with the property tax division actually following the statute on how to collect that. So I'm really on the fence on how this is going to play into the mix. And it may not be an issue at all. Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, that's where I'm just really kind of struggling on, and I don't know how I'm going to vote on this because of that. And I'm just trying to get that clear. So,
Madam Chair, Representative Black, on that point, there is no land grant that are delinquent on property tax. Our land grants that are political subdivisions take that issue of payment of property tax seriously, mainly because in past years, from the 20s through the 60s, we saw that common land lost because of delinquent property taxes. And I think what you might be alluding to is the fact of the the reporting having to do with the audit. There are, like a lot of political entities, some audits fall into certain categories in terms of reporting. And there might be issue with a handful of land grants that maybe are not quite up to par in terms of that reporting process, but there's maybe just one land grant that I know of, the Mora land grant, that is totally irresponsible in terms of that reporting process. But then that group opted out to not be part of the land grant community. But for the most part, I think that's where you might be confused regarding the reporting process, or delinquency process, or or the compliance process. That's a better word, the compliance process on the reporting and the audits.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair. No, actually, I was, and from what I'm understanding is speaking with some of the county treasurers that actually have land grants in their communities. A portion, so I guess it wouldn't be the common land part of it, because the land grant, from my understanding, is members of the land grant can actually be deeded a section of it. We'll say a section. And so once that it's deeded to those individuals, some of those individuals are not paying the taxes. So, that you mentioned earlier, what was it called? Where it goes automatically, the land grant has the authority to buy it back, or is first offered it back if that happens. So that's where I'm just trying to get it all put together in my mind. So I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman. I think that's where I'm at. I'm still kind of unclear. I'm trying to get there. So
thank you, Representative.
Thank you, Representative. Let's turn it over to Representative Black. If you can put down your hand, that way I know if you have any additional questions. No worries. And then Representative Castellanos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Garcia, so how were these partition lands, how were they approved, or were they deeded property from the mother grant, like from the Las Vegas grant? Or was it just something where the mother grant said, here's 3,000 acres, you can name it Los Gallinas, Los Vigiles land grant, you don't have a deed, if something happens, it reverts back to the mother grant? Or was it something that was deeded in court, it's documented, or was it just word of mouth from the Las Vegas board at that time, Board of Trustees?
Madam Chair and Representative Castellano, Mr. Padilla kind of gave a real elaborate example of how his land grant came about in terms of that issue of the mother grant kind of beginning to sell off commons, and where they then made the pitch to be deeded their 3,000 acres that that community had historically depended on, and there has been efforts by some of these partitions to seek title through the court process, like for example the Arroyo Hondo Arriba, north of Taos. Again, the same scenario there. You had the mother grant selling off the land, and the partition, the Valdez community, the Arroyo Hondo Arriba community, made that request of the courts and was granted the deed, mainly because they did not want to lose that and to outsiders. So yes, that's been the process with these partition grants, where the mother grant has made that, and yeah, there has been conditions that if the partition grant no longer is, they cannot sell off, they cannot basically subdivide the common land. But if it ever reverts to the mother grant, that's going to be problematic, because these partition grants will never have the common lands reverted back. That's why they're wanting this political status to solidify their authority. And plus, we have no mother grant in the Arroyo Rondo Arriba. We have no mother grant in the Mora. And the mother grant of Las Vegas is controlled by the district court. There is no board of trustees that makes decisions for that grant. And so these grants, mother grants, in today's status, are basically dysfunctional mother grants or non-existent. And these partition grants do not want to be existing in these kind of precarious, marginalized status. So I hope I answered your question, Madam Chair, Representative Castellano.
Yes and no, Madam Chair, Representative Garcia. My concern is that if this was to go into litigation where, let's say the district court in Las Vegas would say, okay, the grant from Los Vigiles, we're gonna, something happened, let's say something legality, whether they sold off a portion of that grant, and the district court comes and says, okay, we're gonna take control back of that grant that was partitioned off to Los Vigiles, or what precedence does that set for, any legality from them having that property stripped or those rights stripped away from them? And if they're a political subsidiary, what does that do, with those grants?
The district court, Madam Chair, Representative Castellano, in the case of the Las Vegas grant, is aware of this legislation. They are not opposing it. They basically will do what the will of the legislature decides. So they are not going to challenge anything having to do with these partition grants that were once part of the Las Vegas land.
Thank you, Representative Garcia. Madam Chair, one more question. As far as, if we were to pass this bill now, would we set precedents for future partitions to be allowable if we were to pass this bill? Like, let's say the Tecolote land grant says, okay, because I'm a member of the Tecolote land grant, let's say, okay, in Chapel, you guys are going to get 2,000 acres, and you can name it the Chapel land grant, whatever the case may be. Will this set precedents for that?
Madam Chair, Representative Castellano, that's a very good question. And the answer to that is no. This bill basically caps the abilities of partition grants at the number that we're at right now. And in the future, there cannot be any more partition grants allowed by mother grants, so to speak, or original grants.
Okay, Madam Chair, Representative Garcia, thank you. It just like I say, I'm a part of a land grant, and I'd hate to see that happen to my land grant. I'm a part of the Tecolote land grant, and I hold it very dear in my heart. Thank you, Representative Garcia. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Castellano. I believe we have a question or a comment from Representative Montoya. Is that correct? It just has you listed as the chairman, so I wanted to confirm.
I'm not sure why my name is listed incorrectly, but I am indeed Roger Montoya, representing District 40. I have a concern about access.
Madam Chair, and Representative Montoya, excuse me, but sure. I need to address this because we don't want to do this again. Madam Chair, I think Representative Montoya, his name is showing up as Representative Miguel Garcia, because he asked that I email him the link. So what he's using is to hook up to this meeting. He's actually using my email link to me. So that's why our members have to sign on to your own individual link that Mary sends you. So I just wanted to raise that. I just wanted to address that.
Thank you, Representative Garcia. And Representative Castellano, can you also put down your hand unless you have another question as well? Thank you. Sorry, Representative Montoya, please continue.
Absolutely. I will amend this challenging name issue as soon as I can. As a freshman and a representative of citizens in this region, I want to ensure that I have enough knowledge. These are very, very deeply complex issues. I think the notion of equity and hearing from all sides. I understand that the opposition for some reason cannot be heard today or can't seem to come through. So hearing one side is certainly giving me confidence on one side of the story, but I just need to, this is purported to be an equitable, constitutionally compliant venue, and we haven't been able to hear from them for whatever reason. On face and from the documentation here, it looks really reasonable, that everything that has been outlined. My questions lie in the two vetoes from a Republican and a Democratic governor, and the obvious contention that is in place. In the interim committees over the last 6 years, and certainly this last summer, what were some of the critical issues to that end, since those opponents don't have a voice today?
Madam Chair, Representative Montoya, you're asking what the oppositional points are. They contend that that it's kind of an abuse of power to kind of give these partition grants this authority. They feel that it kind of belittles the mother grant, that it diminishes their authority and their power. And I think those are the main issues that they stress. But they never kind of come close to understanding the dilemma that these partition land grants find themselves in, and the ability of the mother grants to intervene on behalf of the partition grants regarding the problems and issues that they have in terms of managing their commons, of protecting their commons, of enhancing community economic development initiatives in these partition land grant communities. The mother grants are totally divorced from anything and everything having to do with addressing the needs and issues of the partition grants. So that's if Arturo Archuleta wants to kind of add to that, Madam Chair, I yield to him. But if I pretty much kind of covered what some of the main points are, then we can just move on with your questions, Representative Montoya.
Okay. Is there a chance to have that answer, or
Mr. Archuleta, would you like to address that question, or Mr. Padilla?
Madam Chair, Representative Montoya, I believe that the chairman did a good job of sort of summarizing what I think are most of the concerns. I believe there was also some concerns raised about this bill impeding federal authority over land grants, and that this somehow is affecting treaty rights. Those issues were both sort of evaluated by both the House Judiciary Committee and the Senate Judiciary Committee when those concerns were presented, and they were determined to not be an issue. It's fully within the legislature's right to create political subdivisions and to recognize them, and to recognize local units of government, which is what land grants are and always have been. When it comes to the question of the federal issue, the role of the federal government in the adjudication in the treaty was to recognize property rights. And although there's some debate as to whether or not that adjudication process was fair and correct and equitable to land grants, the federal government, once the adjudication process completed, they were done recognizing property rights. They do not deal with, recognizing entities as in terms of their governance status. That is something that they relegate to the states, and they recognize when states recognize units of government. So, for example, when the legislature created land grants as political subdivision, the feds and agencies of the federal government have recognized that and now engage in government-to-government relationships with land grant communities in that state. But they don't have any. There's no federal law that deals with how land grants were organized. Again, they were local governments under Spain and Mexico. They're creatures of the legislature. They started in territorial statutes that recognize land grants in the current form that they have today, and then followed up in the state statutes. And the courts have even said they're creatures of the legislature. They're created by the legislature, and their governance status is something that is the prerogative of the legislature.
Thank you, Arturo.
And Mr. Thank you. And committee members and everyone here, can you please make sure your mics are muted so that we can hear all those who are speaking? Thank you.
Yeah, it is quite difficult to hear for me, so I think I grasped most of that. One of my other concerns was the notion of federal jurisdictional, being a novice here and understanding the complexity, the historical importance and the outcome, the implications are enormous. So as I prepare to make a vote, I just simply want to hear the bigger picture hear from the opposition, because I think their voices do matter in this context. And so I will yield back, Madam Chair and Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Montoya. Ms. Maestas, can you mute your mic? I believe it's yours that's putting in the side notes. Thank you. I believe we do have someone who is from the opposition that Gabby had mentioned earlier had trouble signing in during public comment. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them, considering all the issues we've had during public comment to have. Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, my apologies. I missed this. I will actually go to Representative Fajardo so we complete our members' questions, and then I will go back to the public comment that was listed. So Representative Fajardo, my apologies for that. Thank you. Oh, we can't hear you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to table.
Second.
Can we, so then, Mary, can we have a vote on that then? Because there's been a motion to table, and we've had a second. So Mary, can we have a vote on that?
Madam Chair, before we vote?
Yes.
Thank you, Representative Fajardo. I think it's imperative that we might table this, because I'm getting texts from both sides that cannot log on and give their piece on this bill, and I think that we have to offer them their peace of mind and let them explain what they feel on this bill. And Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, that's all I want to say before we go to a vote, because I think it's the right thing to do. Let these people.
Representative, just a point of order, and I appreciate your comments, but generally speaking, in this situation, you would want to reserve those comments for after the vote. You can always do a yes or a no, and you can explain your vote afterwards. Then that's just general procedure. I'm just not trying to do anything, but for some reason, I'm always in this committee, and there's always a lot of freshmen.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Representative Fajardo.
I'm always taking it upon myself to kind of educate along with Representative Garcia. So thank you.
So Mary, can we take a roll call, please? And the vote on the vote currently is to table this HB 41.
Representative Black,
Yes to table.
Representative Castellano,
Yes. And I can explain my vote, Madam Chair.
Representative Cook, Representative Fajardo,
Yes, and I'd also like to explain my vote.
Representative Lujan,
No to table.
Representative Montoya,
No to table.
Representative Serato,
No to table.
Mr. Chairman,
No.
Thank you. Mary, what was the count on this?
3 yes to table and 4 no,
With a vote
and
of
1 excused.
With a vote of 4 to 3, we'll continue debate, but I'll give a moment for representative to give their comments.
Madam Chair, Representative Fajardo still has the floor.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Thank you. The reason I'm moving the table on this particular bill is it's basically, as I'm listening to all the conversations going on and watching the chat that's going on, there seems to be a lot of people that have not had an opportunity to speak on this bill. And as a member of the legislature, you know, one of the things that's extremely important to me is transparency and accountability. And I'm always of the opinion that we always have to have due diligence. So when you have people who want to speak on a bill and they're prohibited because of the technology that we have, that's always concerning for me. We can always bring this back up. We don't have to pass this today, but I'm always very, very hesitant to pass something when there's people who want to speak on it and we basically prevent them, deny them, push them off, whatever you guys want to say. And that's my reason for wanting to table this bill.
Madam Chair, and Representative Fajardo, I kind of sympathize with you, but this bill's been through the mill, you know, and it has passed unanimously from both chambers. But I do want to kind of propose that we kind of reach out to the opposition in the next committee, if this bill passes our committee, in terms of how to make sure that they're able to connect, and also to maybe present printed testimony to the committee members in the next committee in terms of what those concerns are. That way we don't run into the problem that we did in this committee, to where there was no print testimony presented and where we're just not able to kind of link electronically. So I sympathize with you, and I feel that those concerns should be heard, but move the bill forward and have that format better identified in the next committee, which would be judiciary. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that, Representative, and thank you, Madam Chair. You know, and yeah, I appreciate what you said about moving it on to the next committee. Here's what I have a problem with, and I've said this time and time again in all the committees I've ever served on. That is our responsibility in this committee to do it right. We are the land grant committee. It is our job. It is our duty to make sure things are done correctly before we send it on to the next committee. This is kind of an ongoing thing I keep hearing. Well, we'll just push it, and things aren't getting fixed. That's my problem. It's our job to send good legislation on. It's our job and our responsibility in a committee to make sure that when we go to the next committee, it is done right. It's not our job to give them our problems. So I don't like and I don't appreciate anytime anybody says they're going to fix it in the next committee. It's our responsibility and our job. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative and Chairwoman, and I release the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have one more question from our panelists, our committee Representative Montoya.
Oh, I'm sorry, my.
So if you already made your
a point of order, Madam Chair, Representative wanted to explain his vote.
Thank you, Representative Castellano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Han. Yes, you know, I'm just, the only reason I did that was because I've been getting texts a lot from people that are for and against, and I think they're off of the right. Maybe we should have stopped proceedings till we got people online so they could state their cause. But that's why I voted the way I voted, Madam Chair. And, you know, if it comes back to this committee and we can hear both sides, I greatly will take that into consideration. But I thank you for that.
Thank you, Representative Castellano. We do have one more comment from the attendees. Gabby had been speaking with Mr. Quintana. Mary, or Ms. Dean, if we can move Mr. Quintana to be able to speak, that would be very helpful. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Quintana, you can now unmute yourself. Thank you. Mr. Quintana, I don't believe we can hear you. I can't, at least.
Can you hear me now, Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Madam Chair and the rest of the committee. I'd like to begin with that the Mora land grant is alive and well. It's been alive and well, and we entered into a status in 2006 to become a political subdivision. But due to the divisiveness of Representative Miguel Garcia, in particular about this bill and other bills, we have opted out because we do not want to be represented by somebody that is constantly opposing our viewpoints in the legislature and helping his political allies. The Mora land grant is alive and well. And I saw in testimony he mentioned that. He mentioned that the Las Vegas land grant is another unique. And we've had meetings with both the Mora land grant and Las Vegas land grant, present with Mr. Garcia and then former Representative Tomas Salazar, in which he knows that we are alive and well. The Las Vegas land grant, and they're trying to get on too, but they have had difficulty, as we have had difficulty. We finally got in, and thank you so much. But the Las Vegas land grant is unique in the fact that it is governed by a district court judge. What they have out there in their field is allotments, and that the testimony you heard from Mr. Padilla on the land grant, there are allotments, and the Las Vegas land grant has the opportunity to anytime rescind those allotments. And I think they should have contacted the Las Vegas Land Grant Board of Directors and asked them if they could present their information today, because they were presenting misinformation. And we see a lot of loopholes and downright misleading information that Representative Garcia is giving you about the Mora land grant, the Las Vegas land grant, and other land grants that are on the eastern side of the San Luis Cristo Mountains. An example, I'm going to put I don't know, can you see this, Madam Chair? I'm going to put this on the screen. Can you see that?
No, we can't see your screen. We can just hear you.
You can't? Okay. Am I off? You can't even see who you're talking to, right? Okay.
Well, we can see your name. We can't see the
Okay, thank you. Well, I have a map here that was pulled out of the New Mexico State Supreme Court archives on land grants. And this is the land grants and sub-grants that were partitioned during the partition process. And in 1883, the Surveyor General and the Court of Private Land Claims denied this one land grant that Mr. Garcia continues to insist existed, but does not exist. The ones that existed were all denied, just similar to what happened to that land grant that's in the current bill up in Taos County. They were denied confirmation. So here we are creating new land grants and creating a Pandora's box that one of the representatives alluded to, and we can't afford to do that. The court cases that have been heard before the United States Supreme Court, the law that governs land grants through the federal government, the federal government has the sole authority to change or recognize the character of any land grant that was identified. Only they have the authority to do so. the state of New Mexico legislature does not have the authority to change or alter any character of any land grant that was recognized under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo and subsequently under the Surveyor General's report that went to the Court of Private Land Claims in 1903. And that's how come the ones I just mentioned in Mora were all denied. That's how come a lot of them are being denied. You cannot recreate something that happened through a historical treaty. We're talking international law. And as you are all aware of, the treaties are law. They're not just something that's up in the air that can be recognized. And the testimony provided by Representative Garcia and their expert, Mr. Arturo Archuleta, are completely misleading. And we like to sit down at the table at length because this is a miscarriage. We've had to fight this bill. It's had House Bill 46, it has House Bill 35, it's had House Bill 94, and today we have 41. We're going to be running out of numbers, and I agree with the representative saying we got to make good legislation that benefits the people of New Mexico, not a certain group of people. And that's the difficulty, and that's how come from both sides of the aisle, both the Democrat and the Republican side of the aisle, and I don't believe that the governors, both former Governor Martinez and current Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham, abused their power. They were recognizing the law and understood the law as it stands, and that the sole authority of this process and this law is illegal because only the federal government has that authority. So that's how come they didn't abuse their power. They recognized their responsibility and pocket vetoed this bill. This bill should not be, if it gets any further, it should be outright vetoed. This bill has to stop. This is nonsense. The legislature cannot be wasting its time on these issues. We in the Mora Land Grant are in the process of trying to develop ways through the federal government to get back our land through federal resources, both BLM and U.S. Forests, through our current elected official, U.S. Senator Ben Ray Lujan, and our Congresswoman, Teresa Ledger Fernandez. So we're well on our way to proceed that way. And we're not only doing it for the Mora land grant, we're doing it for all the land grants that have had land subsequently taken away from them during the partition process and move this whole issue into that level of thinking where we can help all land grants, not just harm some land grants, because this bill is definitely going to harm land grants. There's a lot of misleading information that has been testified by Representative Garcia and so-called expert witness Arturo Archuleta. And I want them to know that we want a copy of this presentation because those are critical misleading information to you as representatives that are making this decision. And I applaud the representatives that say they want to hear all the information, all the facts, and then make an appropriate and a proper decision on this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Quintana. Representative Lujan, you had a concern or I saw your hand go up.
No, I have thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Quintana, are you available for a question?
Yes, I am, ma'am. Thank you very much, Representative.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Quintana. Can you tell us how if this is enacted or made into law, how this would harm our land grant?
First and foremost, it's going to harm the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, because that's the basis and premises of all the Spanish and Mexican and individual land grants that were given under the Mexican government and the United States government. It will jeopardize and probably even damage the legality of that treaty. Not only do land grants use that treaty, but our native pueblos in New Mexico. We have pueblos in the north and we have pueblos in the south. They have told me personally that they use this treaty to protect their land right privileges as pueblos. So that would harm their ability to use that particular treaty in their process of getting back or fighting their causes under the legalities of this bill. It will also damage, there's Supreme Court decision on these issues of land grants. And an example, in the Mora land grant, a lot of people don't understand that the land grant here in Mora has been impacted significantly by a template that was used by the infamous Santa Fe Ring to to take away lands from the people. Mora land grant was stripped of all its land, similar to what happened in Terra Maria, because we bordered some valuable resources, some timber land, some U.S. forest land, and so on and so forth, valuable resources. So we're trying to gain that back, and yet these individuals are trying to create a barrier from us moving forward in terms of trying to regain our land status back. So when they say stuff that the Mora land grant doesn't exist, that is an inaccurate, false, and outright lie by the representatives saying that we do not exist. I'm here alive and well. Our board of directors is alive and well. We have members that are alive and well. We want to do justice. We expect that the New Mexico State Legislature protect us and the people here of our land rights. And once we violate the treaty, we violate Supreme Court decisions such as the 1903 Court of Private Land Claims, and we violate Supreme Court decisions. I'm telling you, there's several on the books that we can show you when we get in discussion. We are going to be violating the law. We do not want to violate the law. We do not want to pass a law that is illegal to the people of New Mexico. And furthermore, why haven't these parties went out to the land grants that are in Colorado or some of the other land grants throughout the southwestern United States and asked them for their input? Why haven't they went to the Pueblo tribes of New Mexico and asked them for their input on this bill? Because they're doing something in a vacuum. The state legislature does not have the jurisdiction to create or recognize or confirm any land grant. And that's the premise of our argument and our opposition to House Bill 41 and the previous bills, because they're all basically the same bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Quintana. Under my understanding of the conversation today, that there are land grants that have a political subdivision status, and that not all land grants have that status, and that's what this bill would do. Is that your understanding of this, Mr. Quintana, Madam Chair?
Do you want me to respond, Madam Representative Lujan?
Madam Chair, yes.
Okay. There are some. If you would look at all the land grants in New Mexico, maybe 1/3 of them, but there's 2/3 out there that have no desire to become a political subdivision status. As I mentioned to you earlier in my testimony, my statements, we were a political subdivision. We established ourselves and reestablished ourselves in 2006. But when we saw the misleading lies and direction of the land grant movement in New Mexico, led by these individuals that are testifying on your behalf, we opted out. We want no part of Chapter 49 because it is a controlling tool by these individuals to control land grants and use them for their political benefit. It's illegal. It's improper. As you could say, they're trying to use a few land grants to make their way in the land grant movement. An example of this thing is now we see in this new bill, they put in a land grant called San Antonio del Rio Colorado. They had no interest at all. But I imagine Mr. Arturo went up and talked to Mrs. Garcia before. Bless her heart, she passed away. May she rest in peace. But to get them to get involved in this land grant, because this is ridiculous. And they're one of the land grants that claims that they were not confirmed by the Surveyor General and they like to be put under Chapter 49. But as I mentioned, people don't want to go into this because they know of all the detriments it has and the controls that it creates with a few people in the state legislature and a few people in a land grant interim committee to work against anybody that has any belief different from theirs. Our difference is that we have a legal point of view, Representative Lujan, and that point is critical that the legislature realize, and I think our executive body has already realized that issue as well. And that's how come, despite the votes on this bill, it always has been pocket vetoed. It died before in the Senate, in committee. So it hasn't been a smooth paved, easy way for us to stop this bill. Let me tell you, they should focus on something else besides this particular bill in the land grant movement, besides trying to get a few of their political buddies political subdivision status. If land grants have not been confirmed, how can they be in this bill? Okay.
Madam Chair. Mr. Quintana, thank you for that information. And I would like to just ask the sponsor of the bill, Madam Chair, just one more question. Would Representative Garcia, Madam Chair, would this bill make it law that all land grant would become political subdivisions in status, or would they have the option not to?
Madam Chair, Representative Lujan, we're talking about the partition land grants. I kind of mentioned them by name. It's the Arroyo Hondo Arriba, it's the Los Vejiles, it's the Lower Gaina, it's a Carmel, it's San Jeronimo, and the San Agustin. One of those, Carmel, is within the boundaries of the Mora land grant. San Jeronimo, San Agustin, Lower Gaina, and Los Vejiles are within the Las Vegas grant. And Arroyo Hondo Arriba is within the boundaries of the non-existent mother grant, Arroyo Hondo. It's only these land grants we're talking about, because the overwhelming majority of land grants, close to 30, are already political subdivisions and have been so since 2004, and prevailing years like Tomé and Atrisco, like Chilili, Manzano, and Tecolote that came on board after 2004 with individual statutes, just like these land grants are doing now. So it only applies to these 6 land grants that I mentioned that would be given this status. Yes.
Madam Chair, Representative Garcia, so would they still have the capacity, if this bill is passed, made into law, to opt out of that status, or would, if this is, I understand that this is just evening the status for everyone so that they have equal status all around, but would they have the option to not participate in that status? Madam Chair.
Well, as of today, all these land grants wish to participate in that status. The only way that a land grant cannot participate as a political subdivision if they become an inactive land grant and basically stop having board of trustee meetings, abiding by the statute itself, then they become a non-active land grant that is not bound by the statutes. So your answer is no. These land grants are coming to us with open arms, and are being embraced by our Attorney General, who testified. Tanya Maestas. And if this bill in any way whatsoever impacted federal law or the treaty, the Attorney General would be the first to admit that this is what this bill is doing. But they're embracing this bill, and are wanting to kind of embrace these new political subdivisions into the treaty division of Guadalupe Hidalgo, because what we're doing with this legislation is exactly enhancing the treaty, because that's what the treaty is all about. It's protecting the commons. It's continuing this traditional communal ownership, a benefit to not only current owners but heirs to come. So I hope I answered your question, Madam Chair, Representative.
Madam Chair, Representative Garcia, thank you. You did answer that question for me. And I just I'm trying to understand this information that we're getting all here today, and I've been doing some of my homework on this for a while, but the thing is, in trying to understand both sides of this argument today, do you find that there is any way that this would harm the Madam Chair, Representative Garcia, the treaty, and I know you talked about the Attorney General and speaking to this, but do you find any significance in what Mr. Quintana has said today and the concern of that as we're hearing it? Because it is a concern. It's a concern to us as this is, relatively new information for us. Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Garcia.
Well, Madam Chair, Representative Lujan, I can understand the hesitancy of, our rookies in terms of how to kind of juggle some of these issues and some of these matters. And I really appreciate that Mr. Quintana was able to come on board, because it lays to rest the fact that this committee has always been open, to all views on legislation. And we've gone over and beyond in terms of ensuring that that happens. And a good example is this meeting that we called in Las Vegas on December 20th of 2019. And this legislation and the analysis of the Attorney General will attest to the fact that this in no way will hamper the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. It will enhance it. It would basically bring in new land grants that will be elevated in status in terms of abiding by the laws of our land grants in Chapter 49 to one of what was mentioned by Mr. Padilla: transparency, governance, reporting, protection of commons, so no, this in no way is going to impact the treaty and has no bearing on federal law, federal court decisions.
Madam Chair, Representative Garcia, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Garcia, would you like, I'll need a little more time in our panelists, our committee members. Representative Fajardo, did you have an additional question or comment?
No, ma'am. I'm sorry, I forgot to turn that down. I apologize.
Whereas it'll be the new theme of 2021 for all of us.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Representative Garcia, would you like to close?
Madam Chair, no, I don't wish to close. I just wish a passage of this legislation. And thank you for the comments, the debate, and the input from the public.
Thank you, Representative Garcia. So now what is the wish of the committee?
Madam,
is there a
move to table?
Okay.
There is a move to table this bill. It was seconded as well by Representative Fajardo. Mary, can we go ahead and do a roll call? But actually, let me check in. Are we able to do a second table when we've already had a question? Okay, thank you. Mary, can we do a roll call? Thank you, Representative Fajardo.
Move to table. Representative Black.
Yes to table.
Representative Castellano.
No. I'll explain my vote, Madam Chair.
Representative Cook. Representative Fajardo.
Yes to table.
Representative Lujan.
No to table.
Representative Montoya.
No to table.
Representative Serrato.
No to table.
Mr. Chairman.
No.
Two yes, and yes to table, and 5 not to table, and Mr. Cook is excused.
Thank you. With a vote of 2 to table and 5 not to, we'll continue debate. But I will first allow Representative Castellano to explain his vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I thought a table would be suspended so we could get more people to talk on both sides of the bill. I was confused. As we all know, I'm a freshman and I'm learning as I go. So that's why I voted not to table now, Madam Chair. And I thank you for letting me explain my vote.
Madam Chair, I move a do pass recommendation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We now have a motion on the floor for do pass. Ms. Dean, can we do a roll call?
Okay. Representative Black,
No, and I'd like to explain my vote.
Representative Castellano,
Yes.
Representative Cook is excused. Representative Fajardo,
No.
Representative Lujan,
Yes.
Representative Montoya,
Yes.
Representative Serrato,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
5 yes to do pass.
Thank you. With a,
No,
I'm sorry, was that 2 no?
2 no and 5 yes.
Thank you. With a vote of 5 in favor and 2 against, HB 41 duly passes this committee. And now if we can hear from Representative Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. After hearing the testimony today from both sides and the questions that were raised from the other legislators, I don't think that I couldn't vote for this. I don't feel like it's ready to move on yet. I think it needs more work and more people, sitting down at the table and getting it going. So that would be why I had to vote no on this. I think, it could be a good piece of legislation, but at this point, it's not ready. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative Black. And now I'm happy to hand this back to Chairman Garcia. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Serrato, and you did a good job. I really have to commend you, Representative Serrato, on chairing the meeting. And members, that does it for today. we do have Madam Representative Fajardo. Yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify something, just for the sake of the freshmen. Representative Castillo said something like the bill could not move forward or something like that. I just wanted to clarify so all the members understand that a tabling bill means that we're putting the bill on the table. It doesn't mean the bill is dead. When you do a do not pass motion, it means the bill cannot move forward. So all a tabling motion does is it sets it on the table and it can be brought up. So I just wanted to bring that clarity. My other concern, and it's extremely important to me, and I'm going to be the one that always says this because we're going to keep doing this. We're going to keep passing bad legislation on because it's easy. That's not our job, is to do the easy thing. Our job is to do the right thing. It would have been better for our committee to stop, to put it on the table, bring everybody back, fix the bill, and pass good legislation. I'm tired of us doing the easy thing. It's about time we do the right thing. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Fajardo. And
Point of privilege, Mr. Chair.
Let me kind of conclude the conversation with Representative Fajardo, and then I'll recognize you, Representative Lujan. One thing that we kind of failed to mention, and it's no fault of anybody, is on these do not pass motions. Whenever there's whenever there's a tabling motion, whenever there's a tabling motion and a second, there's no debate. So we go straight into the motion, and motions are made, based on the perspective of the member that's bringing forth the motion. So we don't question a member's motives for putting forth motions, but we act accordingly in terms of our own take on what's being put before us. But I do want to make that clear for the rookies, that because I know that there was some kind of input given on the motion, and we didn't go straight to the vote. But Representative Fajardo was right in terms of the difference between the tabling motion and a do not pass. And Representative Lujan, you wanted on that point?
Thank you on that point. Just Representative Ambrose Castellano, not Castillo, is his name. Representative Castellano. Just to say that, and also that appreciate Representative Fajardo's information and education today. And we are learning the order of things. But some of us are seasoned and have information and are doing our homework, so to speak. So really appreciate that as well from our members, and just want to thank all our members today and all the participation in the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lujan. And for the members' sake, even though we might differ philosophically on some issues with Representative Fajardo, some of the Republican in the committee, I have taken it upon myself during the course of this committee to actually call on Representative Fajardo to chair our meetings. Mainly because she is ranking, and sometimes other ranking Democrats are not in the room. They're either out putting on bills or whatever. So I give people the courtesy, of their position in our committee and in the legislature, and kind of recognizing their role and their ability to also be able to lead. So members, if we don't have anything else, we'll just kind of gear up for our next hearing on Thursday. I'm going to try to really kind of get with the sponsor to make sure that the witnesses are kind of lined up, and definitely on the passage of this bill over to judiciary, I kind of really want to also reach out to the opposition in terms of maybe having some printed documents available for that committee, just in case we have the difficulty. Because they did mention that there was another land grant, the Las Vegas board, that 3-member board that also wanted to get in but wasn't able to. So, members, thank you.
Chair,
And
I just want to thank Representative Fajardo for a little bit of a lesson today, and I want to thank you all in the committee. And it's interesting. You learn as you go, and we're not taught when we come here. We learn as we go, and I thank you guys for the support, and I'm very happy to serve on this committee. Thank you all.
Thank you. And let's get some skiing done today, even if it's on on the sidewalk there in the Capitol. Bueno.
Or by Zoom skiing.
Hasta la bye-bye. We'll see you folks on Thursday. God bless you all.
Mr. Chair, quick question.
Yes.
Post committee, were we able to resolve all the issues that we saw in the comments this time? I know Gabby was working on them in real time for this, but I want to make sure that with such, again, less than 60 days left, that we're able to resolve those issues earlier. Were we able to, or is that an ongoing thing we'll have to look at before next week's? Or next
I think as we learn as we go. So that's not to say that we're not going to encounter this in our next committee in terms of a bill. But at least we're bringing these issues to light, with the proper players that are involved in the presentation of a bill, which includes opposition.
Oh, I just meant the technology aspect of it. If we were able to resolve what went wrong in the comments this time, or if we may have that same technological issue next time as well, just so we can be aware.
Yeah, I think I kind of have to get with Gabrielle and with Gabby and just see how exactly we can kind of maybe tighten up some of the disconnect.
Thank you, Chairman.
Bueno, we see you folks. God bless you all.
All right, seeing no further discussion, let's call roll, please. Representative Ocon?
Yes.
Representative Armstrong? Yes. Representative Cook?
Yes.
Mr. Speaker?
Yes.
Representative Eli?
Yes.
Representative Lewis? Yes.
Representative Townsend?
Yes.
Vice Chair Cadena?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
We have a vote of 11 yes, 1 excused.
Yeah, the do pass on House Bill 119 as amended, Representative Alcon.
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you, members of the committee.
Thank you all very much. Representative Miguel Garcia. We're closing in on this agenda, folks.
Madam Chair, might I ask quickly, I've gotten a couple of texts asking what remains. Might we just announce that really quickly?
Oh, I'm sorry. We have the House Bill 41 and House Bill 68.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Miguel Garcia, welcome.
There we go, Madam Chair.
There we are, yay. Okay.
Madam Chair, I have two presenting experts and one technical expert. The two presenting experts are coming from Frontier Communities, and they're coming in by phone. The first is Ronald Vega. His number is 505-670-4845. And the other is Joseph Padilla. He's coming in on phone, 505-454-0735. And then lastly, we have the technical expert, Arturo Chuleta, and I see him on the screen. I don't see my phone guys up there yet.
I'm not sure how that works. Does that work? Have you tried it with, does a phone, kind of phone person be a panelist? Let me ask the Georgia.
It doesn't seem to allow them, but I can allow them to talk.
We can have them talk as an attendee. I can do that for you, Representative, okay?
Super duper, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I'll start the presentation. Madam Chair, members of the committee, House Bill 41 includes new language in Chapter 49, which is our land grant statutes, adding defining criteria of a partition land grant. And House Bill 41 also adds qualifying criteria in what constitutes a partition land grant, Madam Chair. These two elements lead to the objective of House Bill 41, which is establishing partition land grants as bona fide units of government, political subdivisions of the state, and join their 26 sister land grants in that undertaking. Madam Chair, the 2004 milestone land grant reform legislation created in partnership with the land grant communities and the newly formed land grant intercommittee, 26 land grants covered under the general provision of Chapter 49 automatically became political subdivisions of the state in that 2004 milestone legislation. After that, Madam Chair, 5 land grants, not under the Article 1 general provision, but under the Article 2 and Article 3, had to bring specific legislation to the legislature to become a political subdivision. And these land grants were Tomé, Atrisco, Chilili, Tecolote, and just a couple of years ago, Manzano. House Bill 41 follows the same protocols as the existing land grants as political subdivision, but exclusively targeting our partition land grants. And these partition land grants, Madam Chair, are in our frontier communities. We have El Carmel, which is south of Mora. We have the Lower Gainas, which is west of the Montezuma Castle, inside of Hermit's Peak. Los Vejiles, which is between Story Lake and Las Vegas. We have San Agustin, which is south of Las Vegas. We have San Jeronimo, which is south of Las Vegas. And we have Arroyo Hondo Arriba, which is north of Taos, on the road to the Taos Ski Valley. And Madam Chair, I'd now like to recognize Ron Ortega, one of my experts from the Lower Gallinas Partition Grant, and he's on phone number 505-670-4845.
Yes. Good evening. Did I get through this time?
You're okay,
man. Madam Chairman, committee members, thank you. Representative Garcia, thank you. It's a pleasure to have an opportunity to visit with each and every one of you this evening, to take just a few minutes of your very busy schedule to update you on the need, the real need that exists for House Bill 41 to finally reach its full destiny and pass. I represent the Lower Gallinas land grant that Representative Garcia just mentioned, and the representation that I bring to the committee is that of the Lower Gallinas active president of the land grant, an office that I've had on and off for the last 20 years. Seems like 14 to 15 years has been more on than off. Before I get started, in the previous hearing, actually it took place here in Las Vegas, New Mexico, about a year ago, the question came up as to what qualifies me as quote unquote an expert witness. And I would like to start my presentation by identifying who I am and why the information and the questions that I will stand for, if you choose to address those questions to me, what is my foundation? If you will think 1884 to 1977, 93 years, Fidel Ortega was my grandfather. Fidel Ortega was the third generation of Ortegas here in the Gallinas Canyon that utilized the land grant. Third. So that means there was two before him. We are talking now of his age, in just his lifespan, 1884 to 1977, 93 years old. That was introduction to the indigenous knowledge of what a land grant was about. Moving forward, 1996, unfortunately at 68 years old, my Ruben Ortega fell to cancer, but nonetheless, my second mentor and information source of what was going on with the Lower Gallinas land grant. And then me, 1956 to present, a young, happy 64-year-old. So respectfully, I would like to set the record that the information that I'm going to share with you, and it was questions, I will repeat that, it was questioned as to what is my knowledge of it. Well, mine is verbal history, mine is actual indigenous knowledge of 3 generations, myself being the 3rd generation that has worked with land grants. With that, and time concerned, it was in the early 1950s that my grandfather, Fidel Ortega, served as precinct judge for precinct number 12 here in this area. He was summoned along with Mr. Domitilo Martinez and Felipe Blea to a meeting with then head of the Fourth Judicial District Judge, Judge Armijo, to appear in Las Vegas at the courthouse to that approximately 2,000 acres of the Lower Gallinas land grant had been deeded through the power of the district judge, Judge Armijo, to a gentleman by the name of Marujo. This was me a shock. I clearly remember my grandfather telling me this, a total surprise to, of course, not only the three that I mentioned, but to the neighbors and people of the Guaymas Canyon area that utilized land grant. Upon arriving at that meeting, I don't have the specific date and time, and just upon arriving at that meeting, my grandfather made it very clear, llegamos ahí, we arrived there, y nos encontramos, we encountered tres Americanos, 3 Anglo people, encorvatados with ties, y nos dijeron, and they told us, que nos iban a quitar 200 más, o 2,000 acres de la Merced, that they were going to take 2,000 acres of the land grant. And fast forward, what we then recognized, or at least what he recognized, was that the land grant that people had used for years had become a situation that it was up for grabs, I guess is a simple way of saying it. And for lack of knowledge, for lack of communication, for lack of resource, all of which my grandfather and my dad explained to me, it happened. It happened. The acreage was gone. So that, in a nutshell, is the history that I would bring to your table. Of course, I will stand for questions on any of that. But I think the better part of time is to address the present and the future. Currently, the Lower Land Grant, the Lower Guaymas Land Grant, oversees 3,000 acres. This, in relation to the situation in 1852, resulted in a deed that was issued by the 4th Judicial District Judge, Judge Armijo, to the precinct judge, which happened to be my grandfather, but he was only the caretaker, if you will. It was really to the people. Over the years, there's never really been a clear definition or distinction, for lack of a better word, explanation as to just what control and or authority the local people had with their land grants. Nonetheless, the local people, through the Lower Guaymas Land Grant Association, stepped forward, took charge, and started a governing program. Duly elected officers were put in place, members were registered, membership fees were required, guidelines, bylaws, what can you do, what can't you do. Basically, the people stepped forward and took charge of the responsibility of responsibly managing those acres that remained. That continues to exist today. That is the way we operate. Back about 20, 30 years ago, we had a resident challenge the land grant and attempted to claim acreage. We stepped forward as the association and challenged, turned to the Las Vegas board for help and received none. And that's where the real question surfaced. Who's in charge of the Lower Guaymas Land Grant? Las Vegas Land Grant Board claims it when it's to their convenience, as we say in Spanish, a su conveniencia. But when it actually came to, hey, we have somebody that has wanted to take our land, do we have the authority to protect, or is the Las Vegas Board? It was real quick to see the Las Vegas Land Grant Board was very quick to shun the responsibility and put it upon us. I think in a later testimony and or conversation with my fellow Los Vigilas Land Grant Board President, Mr. Joseph Padilla, you're going to hear a similar situation. The problem problem surfaced. We have a land grant that belongs to everybody, but nobody wants to take responsibility. And House Bill 41, the way it has been written, the way Representative Garcia, Representative Salazar have worked with us, actually addresses the question that needs to be answered. Who's in charge? Who really, really is in charge? Who really, really is responsible? Who really, really has the interest of the land grant? We feel through time-proven effort that we, the members of the Lower Davis Land Grant, stepped forward back in the 1950s, yeah, the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and to the present. We are not going to wreck the land grant. We work with the intention to keep it productive, to keep it available to members. We still maintain our membership rosters. We still maintain our bylaws. We do road improvements. We've attempted to do water improvements, timber management, but resources for those type of projects always is lacking. Today, the present, the Lower Ganinas Land Grant, as well as the Los Vigiles Land Grant, lie smack dab in the middle of the watershed, the Ganinas watershed. 6,000 acres plus of timber that unfortunately is a matchbox ready to go up. And because we have not had the authority to really take charge with thin-in projects, with road development, with any type of water improvement projects, it only gets worse. The 2018 Farm Bill opened a door for us, opened a very big door for us, that resources from the United States Department of Agriculture, Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS, are now available to assist not only our land grant, but the remaining.
Hello, Representative.
Yes, Madam Chair.
I thought maybe we lost everybody, but we didn't, huh? I think maybe we could just go to one of your other presenters at this time. We seem to have lost the gentleman who was speaking.
I'd like to now go to Joseph Padilla. He's on 505-454-0735. Joseph, you're on. And Joseph, if you could not be repetitive in terms of what Mr. Ortega just shared, and maybe limit yourself to 2 minutes. You're on.
Go ahead. You have to unmute yourself, sir. If you unmute yourself, we can hear you.
Madam Chair, if they're on the phone only.
Sure, there he is. He's on.
Okay.
Joseph?
Request permission to speak?
Yes, Joseph. Maximum of 2 minutes, Joseph.
Got it. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Representative Garcia, my name is Joseph Padilla. I am a retired school teacher and farmer. I have lived in Los Vigiles for 73 years, and I have been a member of the Los Vigiles Partition subgrant for 50 years and served on its board. I also served on the Acequia Madre Los Vigiles Commission. The community of Los Vigiles was established around 1835. Farmers were irrigating farmlands before Las Vegas was established. The Acequia Madre de Los Vigiles was formally recognized by the Mexican governor in Santa Fe in 1841. 1841 is the priority date of La Sequía Madre Los Ejiles. The forested area around Los Ejiles was used as common lands for the community Los Ejiles. It was organized with a governing structure. Some of the uses included grazing, timber, wood, hunting, farming, and irrigation at Cañón del Agua. Some individuals actually built homes and settled within the subgrant. Move forward to 1951. Los Ejiles has managed the partition grant by an elected board of trustees since 1951. Regular meetings are held according to the Open Meetings Act. There is a set of bylaws and regular elections are held. The original instigation for a partition unit of government was because of challenges Los Ejiles experienced in receiving water and shed restoration and fire prevention funding from the state. State Forestry Division had approved funds to reduce the risk of fire to the watershed of Las Vegas, but the uncertain status of the Los Ejiles delayed moving the funds into action. Also, Los Ejiles successfully defended itself in court against not a state landowner who blocked access on a road to the bidding area. Los Ejiles prevailed in district and appellate courts. We received no support from the Las Vegas land grant or help from them. We strongly support House Bill 41. As a summary, we support Los Ejiles becoming a unit of government, House Bill 41. Number 2, this would enable us to apply for grants such as forest thinning. Thinning improves habitat for wildlife, reduces forest fires, and makes firewood available to the public. Forest thinning is desperately needed. Some areas have 400 trees per acre, where 40 to 50 is the norm. Also, Los Ejiles is a tributary to the Gainas River Basin, which is the drinking water to the city of Las Vegas, and acequia water for farming. Number 3, becoming a unit of government means compliance to the Open Meetings Act. Number 4, there is fiscal oversight by the state. Audits may be required. Number 5, promotes transparency of our public officials. That includes regular meetings, bylaws, all business is done at regular public meetings. This is accountability for public officials. Number 7, this bill has passed both houses, vetoed by 2 governors. Number 8, Los Ejiles subgrant has been behaving as a unit of government since the beginning around 1835. Finally, we will continue to defend ourselves in court, and we strongly support House Bill 41. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Madam Chair, with that, we stand for questions.
Thank you. Let me see if there's anyone in the audience on this particular issue. Is anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Andrea Padilla.
Madam Chair, ask him to hit the raise hand.
Well, I'm calling on raised hands right now.
Okay.
So I had Andrea Padilla.
Oh, yes. Madam Chair, members of the committee, Representative Garcia, this is Andrea Padilla, President of the New Mexico Land Grant Merced Consejo and President of the Town of Domel Land Grant. And I'd like to say that we stand in full support of this bill. Anything that would help land grants be acknowledged and accepted for the government entities that they've been running as, is a great thing. This will allow these small communities to gain access to resources which will enable them to provide more for their communities. And we stand in 100% full support of HB 41, and we ask that you approve it and move it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Gilbert Quintana. I would like to ask members to keep your comments at no more than 2 minutes. Leonard Martinez. Mr. Martinez, just unmute yourself. There you go.
Madam Chair, this is Leonard Martinez, President of the South Community Land Grant, and also a member of the Land Grant Council. We strongly support House Bill 41, and we hope you approve it and move it forward. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Steve Polacco. Just unmute yourself, please.
Madam Chair, members of the
Go ahead.
Steve, unmute yourself.
I think you muted yourself again, Mr. Polacco.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Miguel Garcia, I am the president of the Mercedes de los Pueblos, the Tierra Maria Land Grant, and also I am a Land Grant Council member. And on behalf of Tierra Maria Land Grant, we strongly support House Bill 41, and hope you give a big yes and a go for it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have a telephone number, 505-670-4845.
Madam Chair, that's Ron Ortega.
Oh, he already spoke.
Yeah, he already spoke.
All right. Gilbert Quintana, did you already speak?
Madam Chair, this is Gilbert Quintana.
Yes.
On behalf of la Mercedes Antes de la Mora, also known as the Mora Land Grant, we oppose House Bill 41. We have consistently opposed this bill because the state legislature does not have the authority to change the nature or the character of any land grant conferred by the U.S. Congress or to recognize a land grant or partition that was not conferred by the U.S. Congress. I'll give you a fine example. The Mora Land Grant through the Santa Fe Ring was stripped of all its land. We have no land. We are a landless land grant. So it's really concerning to us, how can a land grant that wants to carve out of the Mora Land Grant get land, and yet this is a landless land grant? This is totally illegal. We have to get the land grant, the mother grant, in line first before we start talking about these other land grants. In the original confirmation process, the land grant and the Surveyor General's report recognized 5 land grants that were considered for partitioning, but none of them were recognized. So it left the Mora Land Grant with 826,000 plus acres, which was stripped completely from the people of the land grant, which borders in 4 counties. It's very important for us to know that these bills, if they go forward, have serious repercussions not only to federal laws, but state laws as well. The federal laws and also the Supreme Court decisions of the government, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, the Court of Private Land Claims, the Surveyor General's report, and of course we have others as well. So this bill is totally illegal process and is unconstitutional, and I must stress unconstitutional because it's ambiguous and contradictory in its terminology in the bill. So as mentioned, how can one give somebody land in New Mexico through a Chapter 49 process when the land grant is completely landless? That's what we're working on, is trying to get some of our land back. We had some of the most valuable resources, as you may know, from any land grant, water and mountains and timber and so forth. So we were stripped completely of all land, similar to a lot of the other land grants. The template that was used in Mora was used in Tierra Maria and other places throughout New Mexico. So we're very much concerned that why would you want to do this if you know it's unconstitutional and illegal? That the bill itself is ambiguous and contradictory. I am open for questions and from any of the committee members, because as you know, this bill has been before you 4 times under 4 different numbers, has been pocket vetoed by 2 governors, a Republican and a Democrat, so they understand the legalities of this bill. it's important that the legislature realize the legalities of this bill.
Thank you very much. Last I have John Olivas. Mr. Olivas, will you please limit your comments to 2 minutes? And unmute yourself, please.
Yes, hi, this is John Olivas. I am the board of directors for the Mora Land Grant, along with Mr. Quintana. He gave some good information regarding kind of the land grant, regarding kind of what the situation here is. As far as one of the sub-grants that are being proposed, here is the Empowerment Land Grant, which Mora Land Grant currently, as Mr. Quintana mentioned, is a landless land grant. Here in Mora County, we have a very high resolution of private land, along with some the Santa Fe National Forest that exists within it. And what's going on here is a sub-grant is being proposed by some private landowners within El Carmen that is looking to get some revenue from the state of New Mexico under the land grant claims. So the Board of Trustees here in the Mora Land Grant is in opposition of that specific sub-grant. I think there's some pretty good efforts along other sub-grants in other parts of New Mexico. If you look at the Mora Land Grant is one of the largest land grants that was issued in the state of New Mexico. But as we currently mentioned, we are a landless land grant. So there's a big effort trying to organize, trying to make sure that we have a board of directors in place to move forward with what is happening. There is been opposition by 2 governors. So there is potentially an effort in this 3rd governor to be able to veto. We would like to get a veto versus a pocket veto, because this is something that's coming around year after year. Again, Mora Land Grant, we're in opposition of House Bill 41.
Oh, thank you very much. Representative Garcia, if you would like to respond before we go to the committee.
Madam Chair, not really. I know that there were some comments made by Mr. Quintana in particular that are kind of clarified in your committee analysis. The Judiciary Committee analysis really kind of did a really incredible job kind of addressing those exact points that Mr. Quintana raised and putting them in perspective in terms of what the legislature can or can't do, and in terms of the role of the legislature in terms of affording partition land grants the same opportunity that we've done with other land grants that did not become political subdivisions in that 2004 milestone legislation, Madam Chair. So we stand
Okay.
with Partitions.
All right, first I have Representative Nybert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to make sure that I understand the breadth of this legislation. And Madam Chair and Representative, you mentioned 6, I believe, either land grants or subdivisions of a land grant. Is that all that this bill is limited to? Are those 6 specific parcels of land?
Madam Chair, Representative Nybrook, that's correct.
So this legislation is not broader and doesn't affect, I heard somebody mention the Tierra Maria grant or other grants in the state that maybe I'm more familiar with. This only deals with the 6 grants that are in the Taos and Las Vegas area, if I took my notes down correctly.
That's correct, Madam Chair, Representative Nybrook. And there is no relevancy in terms of the comments in regards to the Tierra Maria land grant, because they're already an existing political subdivision that became one in that milestone 2004 legislation.
Well, there's still controversy there, but anyway, don't want to venture too too far into that one. The 6 land grants that you, or the 6 parcels of land that you mentioned, are 100% of the owners of land within those areas in agreement with this legislation?
Madam Chair and Representative Nyberg, yes, they are. And at different points in the hearing process, in the last 6 years, maybe going on 7 years, different partition grants have come before the interim committee and have testified in the different legislative committees in terms of moving that legislation forward.
And so there are no people that own land within these tracts that would be objecting to the effort that you're engaged in House Bill 41. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Representative Nyberg, that's correct.
And Madam Chair and Representative, is it the desire of those landowners then to change the status of those lands so that they're now they're removed from maybe private ownership into more of a communal or a common type ownership pattern, or what actually transpires if this bill passes and these things are recognized?
Madam Chair, Representative Nyberg, the communal aspect of these land grants has been continuous since the 1800s. So that nature is not going to go away. And these land grants basically are private property, but they're owned in common. So the only thing that's changing is kind of the inequity, the inequitable status as a partition land grant versus a land grant that is a political subdivision. Right now, as was mentioned, Madam Chair, by Mr. Padilla, and also Mr. Ortega was going to probably allude to that eventually, but is that some of these thinning projects were basically discontinued when the state realized that Olivas was not a full-fledged political subdivision. They were just considered a subgrant. So they pulled back on those fundings, on that funding. As a political subdivision, they're entitled not only to capital outlay from the state, but also to tap into those federal grants that are made available to political subdivisions of the state, in this case, land grants.
Well, so maybe I can visualize it because of my lack of understanding. Let's say one of these areas is 1,000 acres. Is it your testimony, Madam Chair and Representative, that 1,000 acres is owned by, say, 100 different people, and they each own in common the 1,000 acres, or do the 100 people own specific tracts within the 1,000 acres? Like one owns 10 acres, one owns 50 acres, one owns 640 acres, etc.
Madam Chair and Representative Nyberg, these partition grants have certain acreage. These grants in San Miguel County have an average of 3,000 acres. It's owned in common, and the deed is to the partition land grant. I would yield to my technical expert, Arturo Chuleta, if he could maybe kind of elaborate on the specifics of your question. Arturo?
Yes, Madam Chair, Representative Garcia, Representative Nyberg. So what's a question here in terms of the management of the grant itself is the common lands. And so although these individual communities do have private parcels that are owned owned, and that's the case with like land grants in general, where you might have private individual parcels within that grant. There is a specific set aside of common lands, and that's really what is owned and managed by the grant in common for the community. And so that's really what we're talking about. And so within these different 6 grants that we're talking about, it varies in terms of the amount of property that is owned in common. Within those Vegas partitions, it's roughly 3,000 acres. I believe up in the Arroyo Hondo Arriba grant, they still manage around 800 acres. And I think in the case of the El Carmel community, they may have maybe a couple of 100 acres in common that encompass like a plaza and the local cemetery, things that are sort of commonly used and managed for the benefit of that local community.
And Madam Chair, Representative, was that Mr. Ortega that was speaking?
Madam Chair, Representative Nyberg, no, that was Arturo Archuleta.
Oh, Mr. Archuleta, okay. That's what I'm trying to understand. So we're dealing with lands, individual landowners own certain lands, and that is not subject to House Bill 41, but the common lands that the collective group owns is subject to House Bill 41. Did I understand that correctly?
Madam Chair, Representative Nyberg, that is correct. Land grants sort of have management authority over the common lands within a community that is in their management and ownership as the grant. But the private parcels within that are not affected, and they're not, land grants don't have jurisdiction over the private parcels. Those parcels would fall under like the general county jurisdiction, or if it's a municipality, whatever sort of jurisdiction in terms of regulation. But the common lands is what's encompassed in the general statutes for land grants, and this would bring those land grants under 49.1.
And at the present time, Madam Chair, Representative, I presume San Miguel County, Mora County, whatever county that these lands are located in, that the tax assessor and the treasurer send out tax statements assessing the ad valorem taxes on the common lands. Is that is my assumption there accurate?
Madam Chair and Representative Nyberg, that's correct.
And so, Madam Chair and Representative, one of the effects of this bill could possibly be if these common lands are now deemed to be governmental units, would they be taken out of the county tax base?
Madam Chair, Representative Nyberg, no, because these properties are designated fee simple ownership, private ownership. And that's
so,
and aside from that, because a typical political subdivision, municipality, county, school board, conservation district, local improvement districts do not pay property taxes. But in the case of land grants, the land grant community did not want to make that an issue in terms of moving milestone legislation of 2004 forward, because we knew that we would kind of get into a big hole in terms of that fight with the local assessors and local treasurers. So maybe down the road, when the time is right, land grants might relook at that aspect of a full political subdivision that does not pay property taxes. But at the moment, those taxes are in place on their commons.
Okay, Madam Chair and Representative, thank you for that clarification, because I was assuming that one of the benefits of doing this would be to try to take those out of the tax base. That is not that is not the case. So my assumption there was not accurate. I'm a little bit concerned about some of the issues that were raised, but I'm certainly not in a position to argue with those allegations. And if these are indeed land grants that have been properly recognized, and there's some benefit that's bestowed by this legislation. I'm not real concerned with these 6. I am concerned if this is just another effort toward moving toward some land grants that I'm very familiar with the title to, and its impact and effects on private property rights of other individuals. And so I'm pleased to hear your testimony that 100% of the people that own these common lands are in agreement. I'm pleased that with your testimony that this legislation limited to these 6 grants that you identified, and I'm pleased to hear, or maybe I should ask the question, Madam Chair, Representative, this is not an effort to continue to expand these concepts into some of the other land grants where there are a lot of private land grants that have been cut up over the years and are held in fee ownership by hundreds or thousands of people at this point in time.
Madam Chairperson Nyberg, that will not be the case. This is real specific, real targeted legislation.
Okay, Madam Chair, Representative, thank you for that testimony, and I guess we can see what the governor does with it again. I guess it may be the third time to do it if there have been 2 other efforts that haven't succeeded, but that would be beyond my knowledge as to what those intricacies are. Madam Chair, Representative, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Nyberg, are there further questions? I don't see any other hands up. Are there, what's the pleasure of the committee? Well, I will move a due pass because
I just, Madam Chair, wasn't quick enough. I'll second your motion.
Okay. We're on a motion for a due pass on, get the right bill number, excuse me. It's been a long evening.
That's
41. 41, okay. Will the clerk please call a roll?
Representative Alcon?
Yes.
Representative Armstrong?
Yes.
Representative Cook? Mr. Speaker? Representative Eli?
Yes.
Representative Lewis?
Yes.
Representative McQueen?
Yes.
Representative Nyberg?
Yes.
Representative Green? Representative Townsend?
Yes.
Mr. Speaker? Representative Green?
Hello? Can you not hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I said yes. I vote yes.
Okay. And Representative Green? Vice Chair Kadema?
Yes.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
We have a vote of 10 yes, 2 excused.
Okay, you have a due pass. Representative Garcia, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I wish you folks a well-deserved shut-eye. What you deserve it. But this hearing was really high level and all day. So I well appreciated shut-eye for this meeting.
You used to be on it.
Good morning, you're our 5th member, so Veronica, let's go to the webcast. Trevor?
We can begin.
Okay, Veronica, would you please take the roll?
Senator Cervantes? Senator Gallegos? Senator Hamblin? Senator Neville?
Here.
Senator Pope?
Present.
Senator Schmitty? Senator Soul?
Here.
Senator Cedillo Lopez?
Good morning, yes, here.
Chairman Stefanik?
Yes. Do we have a quorum?
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. We are starting today's meeting with House Bill 41, and Representative Miguel Garcia is with us. It's to establish certain land grants Mercedes. So, Representative Garcia, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and muy buenos días to all of you on this fine morning. And Madam Chair, I do have some experts, and I see them on the screen. The phone number one, the last four numbers are 0735. That is Joseph Padilla. He's one of our leaders of partition land grants. I also see Ron Ortega, who's another of my experts. And then Arturo Chuleta is also an expert, just for technical questions, Madam Chair. So we're all on board. And I'll go into the presentation. The reason that these two gentlemen, leaders of partition grants, are on the phone is because they live out in kind of frontier communities where the internet is very spotty, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, House Bill 41 includes new language in Chapter 49, which are our land grant statutes, adding defining criteria of a partition Spanish land grant, Madam Chair. And House Bill 41 also adds qualifying criteria in what constitutes a partition land grant. Madam Chair, these two elements lead to the objective of House Bill 41, which is establishing partition land grants as bona fide units of government / political subdivisions of the state. Madam Chair, in doing this, these partition land grants join their 26 centuries old sister land grants in that undertaking, Madam Chair. And this legislation, Madam Chair, applies only to 6 partition land grants in our state. These being El Carmel, which is south of Mora, Lower Gallinas, which is west of Montes, near Hermit's Peak, Los Vigiles, which is between Story Lake and Las Vegas, San Agustin, which is south of Las Vegas, San Jerónimo, which is south of Las Vegas, Arroyo Hondo Arriba, north of Taos, in the beautiful valley en route to the Taos Ski Valley ski resort. And Madam Chair, I would now like to yield to Joseph Padilla for a brief 2-minute presentation on the significance of this legislation. Go to Ron Ortega after that, and then I'd like to come back and make some concluding remarks on our presentation, Madam Chair.
Please, let's proceed.
Joseph has to unmute himself, Madam Chair. There you go.
Request permission to speak?
Yes, please.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Joseph Padilla. I have lived in Los Vigiles for 73 years. I have been a member of the Los Vigiles Partition Grant for 53 years. I have served on the Los Vigiles Partition Grant Board. I am currently on the Los Vigiles Acequia Commission. The community of Los Vigiles was settled around 1835. The settlers were farmers, ranchers, woodcutters, and skilled laborers. The surrounding area included small farms and common lands. Farms were adjacent to the Gallinas River. Common lands were west of the village in the mountains and the forest. The partition grant is the common lands west of the village. The forested area around Los Vigiles was used as common lands for the community of Los Vigiles, and it was organized with a governing structure. Some of the uses of the common lands included grazing, timber, wood, hunting, dry farming, and some irrigation in the Cañón del Agua area. Some individuals actually built cabins and settled within the partition grant. Move forward to 1951. The Las Vegas land grant wanted to sell the common lands west of Los Vejiles. Jose Martinez and Jose Maria actually purchased 100 acres each within the partition grant. A group of individuals from Los Vejiles went to the district judge and got a deed for the common lands. This deed was for 3,000 acres and became the partition grant of Los Vejiles. The Las Vegas land grant also gave a deed for the common lands to the community of Los Vejiles. This occurred around 1951. Similar deeds were given to Lower Gainas, San Jeronimo, and others. The partition grant of 1951 has been governed by an elected board of trustees. The partition grant has been self-governed and has defended itself in court. We have been a standalone entity. Regular meetings are held in compliance with the Open Meetings Act. There is a set of bylaws and regular elections are held. The original instigation for becoming a unit of government occurred because of the challenges Los Vejiles experienced in receiving watershed restoration and fire prevention funding from the state. The state forestry had approved funds to reduce the risk of fire to the watershed above Las Vegas, but the uncertain status of Los Vejiles delayed moving the funds into action. Additionally, Los Vejiles successfully defended itself in court against another state landowner who blocked access on a road to the thinning area. Los Vejiles prevailed in district and appellate courts at great sacrifice to its members. We received no support or help from the Las Vegas land grant. In summary, Madam Chair, we support House Bill 41 to become a unit of government. This would enable us to apply for forest thinning grants. Thinning improves wildlife habitat, reduces risk of forest fires, makes firewood available to the public. Forest thinning is greatly needed. Some areas have 400 trees per acre, where 40 to 50 is the norm. Los Vejiles is a tributary to the Gainas River, which is the drinking water to the city of Las Vegas and the second water for farming. Becoming a unit of government means compliance with the Open Meetings Act, fiscal oversight by the state, and promotes transparency from public officials. We want accountability. It is important to us. House Bill 41 has passed committees and both houses with pocket veto by two governors. Los Vejiles has been behaving as an organized entity with a self-governing structure since 1835. We strongly support House Bill 41 and welcome becoming a unit of government. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. And Representative Garcia, who was your next expert?
Madam Chair, I yield to Ron Ortega.
Thank you. Mr. Ortega.
Ron, unmute yourself. There you go.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. This is Ron Ortega, and I am the president of the Lower Gainas Land Grant, which is the neighboring land grant to the Los Vejiles Land Grant. In interest of time, after listening to President Padilla, he did an excellent job of explaining the situation that the Lower Gainas Land Grant is in. The fact that we are neighboring land grants, together we manage a little over 6,000 acres, just neighbor to neighbor. So in interest of time, I'm not going to repeat the history. Mr. Padilla, thank you. You did an awesome job. Committee members, I'd ask that what Mr. Padilla has stated with the history, the situation we're dealing with, is so similar, I'm going to let that stand. Specifically and to the point, the Lower Gainas Land Grant does fully support and request that the committee support House Bill 41 for the reasons that have been stated. Specifically, we find our common lands are in danger to adverse possession lawsuits by people who claim it. Like Los Olivas, we've had to defend our land boundaries with no help from the Las Vegas land grant. We find that we have a history of managing our land grant through proper channels, organized meeting structures, and organized governing body, and we have definitely lived up to what the expectations of the land grant are, is to serve the community and its members. We find today that we are in a position that with the new Farm Bill, the 2018 Farm Bill, there are funds available to help us continue managing our timber, water, land resources that we cannot access now because of our status, and state funds the same. So in summary, we ask that the committee listen, accept our request, respectfully accept our request that House Bill 41 is important to us, very, very important, and that it be passed and moved on, and hopefully once and for all, it will pass. Madam Chairman, I stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Representative Garcia, who else?
That's it on our experts. I do want to make some closing comments on our presentation, Madam Chair.
Okay, could you wait till we hear from the opponents and the proponents, and then I'll give you that chance?
Fine, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So are there any opponents? I have one here on this bill. Mr. Quintana, are you here to oppose this bill?
Madam Chair, yes, I am present.
Are you here to oppose this bill?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Please go ahead and speak.
Respect permission to speak, Madam Chair, to you and
yes.
to the senators. Thank you, and thank you. Buenos dias, adios. Good morning, and may the Lord watch over you. My name is Gilbert Quintana, and rather than going to a dialogue about what we presented over the last 4 to 5 years, because many of you have gotten the data, the legal opposition to it, and so forth. But let me tell you a little bit about me, because I think sometimes they see the opposition, even our own people, as opponents to land grant movements. We have supported many, many bills that have come through the land grant interim committee over the years. We are definitely in opposition to this bill. My name, as I mentioned before, is Gilbert Quintana. I am a graduate from the University of Colorado with a BA and a master's degree from the University of Denver. I did get my schooling there, but I was born in a 400-year-old home here in Mora. 400 years. Our ancestors were indigenous people first, and then they intermarried with the Mexican people. But this village and this home that I'm talking about, my great-great-grandmother was born in it, my grandmother was born in it, my mom was born in it, I was born in it. I was born in the same room as my mother in opposite corners. We used to have a little disagreement from time to time, but that's just our positioning from our birth.
So Mr. Quintana, I need to hear why you're opposed, because we usually only give the proponents and opponents a minute or two to speak. So please summarize, yes.
Yeah, well, that's why I want you to know that we're normal people too. We want inclusion as well. We don't want to be excluded in any decision-making process, and that's what we felt over the last 4 years, even though we've fought successfully to defeat this bill. You have plenty of data there. I just wanted to give you a history of some of the members here and what kind of common people we are. That way you get a grasp that you're dealing with people that want to be included, that don't believe in systemic racism, that don't believe in gentrification, that don't believe in things that are going to harm this land grant. And I think that's important. And that's our opposition, is that we fought on those basic fundamental principles over these last 4 years to deal with this bill. Now we want to be included and we want to be heard. And in the legislature we have not, in the executive we have, and we hope that the legislature would once again include us in that conscious knowledge of these issues. I mean, because today we have a new Santa Fe ring and it's a little more colored than it was in the past. And we want to make sure that we are not excluded, because in the past, they used our own people against us to defeat us and taking our lands away. The reason this land grant is so critical is that we're a landless land grant, Madam Chair and fellow senators. We're a landless land grant. We've been fighting to get land back from various entities in the federal and state government for a while. That's where we need the support, not a fight against us. It's very important that we be included in this decision, because in this landless land grant, one of the land grants that was mentioned for partition, how could you partition a land grant that has I would gather, a deed from 1930-something out of a landless land grant? You can't create a new land grant.
Okay. Wrap it up in 30 seconds, please.
Okay, well, I just want to let you know, I hope you've heard what I've had to say. Please include our thoughts and our prayers so we can continue in this struggle and go forward, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much for being with us this morning, Mr. Quintana. Okay, are there any other opponents to this bill? Okay, are there any proponents to this bill? Andrea Padilla, are you planning to speak on this, Ms. Padilla? Okay, Representative Garcia, why don't you go to your closing and then we'll go to the committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I just wanted to highlight the significance of the advantages of creating these partition land grants as a unit of government, which they are not currently in that status. The advantages, Madam Chair, are that they're entitled to capital outlay, just like their the 26 sister land grants. They are entitled to federal grants, as was stated. They are exempted from adverse possession lawsuits. These are squatter lawsuits, Madam Chair, that have been imposed on land grants historically, and where land grants spend much of their expenditures fighting off these squatter settlements, Madam Chair. Under a local subdivision status, they're exempt from adverse possession lawsuits. They also are able to determine their zoning to protect the commons, which is crucial in terms of the acreage that our Spanish community land grants have. Also, to elect, because we're bringing our land grants under political subdivision status, they're subject to an election code that basically is free of nepotism and corruption in terms of elections of their board of trustees. Also, they're entitled to free legal services, which we created through the Community Governance Attorney Act. As was noted, they fall under the Open Meetings Act, where they have to give notices to the general meetings. Also, Madam Chair, they're entitled to right of first refusal on any state-owned property that goes up for sale. And that right of first refusal is applicable to any state-owned property within the original boundaries of their historic land grant. And Madam Chair, with that, we stand for questions.
Thank you very much. I now have Senator Souls, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move it to pass.
Okay, is there a second?
I second, Madam Chair.
Okay, Senator Gallegos, you had your hand up.
Madam Chair, I appreciate it. President Chairman Garcia, I did have a question on, and I've been part of the land grant interim committee meetings forever, but I was wondering how Mr. Quintana's issue is being dealt with. I understand they don't have any of the land, but being that they had pre-notification on the boundaries, is there anything that we can do for his group? Madam Chair, Representative.
Madam Chair, and Senator Gallegos, you've been with us over in the House for a long time, so congratulations.
Thank you.
You know, Senator, we've taken into consideration some of their concerns throughout the years and applied them to language in the bill before us. especially when it comes to that what we're doing here is we're opening up the floodgates to more partition grants. That's not the case, and that was a concern that the opposition had. So what we've done under the definition, we basically stated that a partition land grant is a community that existed prior to 2004 when we passed the milestone land grant reform measure that created land grants as political subdivisions of the state. And as far as your other point in terms of assisting these this particular individual and the land grant in Mora, they've opted to not participate in the land grant process established by the reform measure of 2004 and established by the priorities of the land grant interim committee, Madam Chair and Senator.
Thank you very much. Senator Gallegos, yes.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair and Representative. I just wanted to make sure that we were still trying to allow them to be a part. I just recently sold my property in Colorado, and after having it in the family since 1833, I know how hard it is for the land grants. We're part of the Conejos land grant originally, and the Conejos land grant's no longer a land grant, even though it's in Colorado, my South Manson state boundary. But I just know how hard it is to be the only one out there fighting and trying to get something done. So I just want to make sure they're still at least in communications and see that we're trying to include them. So with that, I'll yield and second I'll wait for someone else to second it. So thank you, Madam Chair and Senator, Representative, thank you so much.
Thank you. Senator Schmies, you have a question?
Thank you. No, Madam Chair, I just wanted to say hi to my good friend from the House days, Representative Garcia. Really good to see you again. And I wanted to remind you what my middle name is, in case you forgot. Greg Mercedes Schmides. So good to see you, my friend.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Senator, I thought you were going to say, Greg, SpongeBob.
Well, I was going to.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We're moving on. We're losing some members. We're losing some members soon. So, Veronica, please call the roll.
Senator Cervantes?
Yes.
Senator Gallegos?
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Hamblin?
Yes.
Senator Neville?
Yes.
Senator Pope?
Yes.
Senator Schmidt?
Yes.
Senator Sol?
Yes.
Senator Cedillo Lopez?
Yes.
And Chairman Stefani?
Yes.
Unanimous.
Unanimous do pass. And Representative Garcia, the reason I'm rushing is because we're going to lose 2 members soon, and we want to hear our agenda this morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. God bless you on this fine day.
Thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. Okay, members.